So I'm not going to reintroduce Miss Patti. She spoke last time and you're all familiar with her, but I will turn the presentation over to Patti right now.
Thank you so very much, Mike. I appreciate it. And you all make sure to hit the record button. I don't see it going, but it may be because I'm sharing my screen. But welcome back, everyone. I said welcome in the chat, but now I can officially welcome you guys. Tonight, I'll be talking about lesson module 15, which deals with the license, regulations, bans and privileges, and international rules. And then later on, I will talk about call signs. And so as you probably have already figured out, I do more of the administration part of ham radio. So there's not going to be any experiments, no cute little conductors or light switches turning on. It's kind of a boring topic, but one of the most important topics within this ham radio section. So we will go ahead and begin. Our first section, as it says, is license rules. And the first thing I want to point out is on the bottom of each slide, you should be able to see a page number. And the reason I put the page numbers on there is so that you can follow along. There are things that we will go over, and of course, there's things we may not have time to go over, but you can follow along in the book to know where I am when I'm talking about each subject. We spoke a little bit on last week about the licensing authority being regulated through the Federal Communications Commission, which is FCC. You will hear a lot about Part 97 of Title 47 of the federal regulations. And so don't think this is the only time you're going to hear about Part 97, because it will not be. You just need to know that that's what our rules are governed by with the FCC. And the book that you see actually on the slide is a book at Amazon. So you actually want to go out and read more about the FCC rules, all of those rules that deal with amateur ham radio. That book is for sale. So why is there ham radio? Some of you may remember from last week that this was part of the slide that I went through on that time. So this would just kind of be a refresher for those who were not here on last week, and even for those who were here on last week. It's all about emergency communication, the art and science of radio. And you can read the rest of the slide. I will not go over it, but I like to really think about it as promoting and enhancing international goodwill. That is one of the most important things about ham radio. We talked about vocabulary and terminology and how important it is when you are discussing ham radio, because if you don't know the vocabulary when it comes time to take the test, then you won't know what question they're asking you about. And so here are just some of the definitions that you will need to pretty much put to memory. One is your amateur service, and that's the key thing there is this is no pecuniary interest. It's private and personal and non-commercial. And right now, all of the lines are getting pretty blurred when it comes to amateur radio. So we just want to really make sure that it hits home that this is for non-commercial use only. The operator is the person who holds the amateur radio station. And then the station part authorizes the physical station. And so I like to think of it as your driver's license and your driver's license plates. You have to have a driver's license and able to operate that vehicle, and then you have to have that vehicle registered with the state in order to get a license plate. Well, the same thing goes with ham radio. You have to have that call sign and basically pass the test so you can get that call sign through FCC before you can ever operate the radio station. So the amateur license, one of the things that we love to talk about here is that there is no age limit or citizenship restriction. We talked about that a little bit last week because we have the King family here, and even though you all are not able to see them because they were having some technical difficulties, they have some children that are interested in getting their ham radio license. Well, guess what? They are absolutely able to do that. And so we are happy to have them as part of our group. It also says that there's 3 levels of operator privileges. And so there's your technician license. The next license would be your general, and then you would have your amateur extra license. So you may be wondering, so how long once I get this license is it good for? The license is free and it is good for 10 years. You are able to renew within 90 days of the expiration date. There will be some personal identification information that will be asked of you, which I know that when it comes to Social Security numbers, it's like, I don't want to give that out. Well, guess what? You no longer have to give that to us when you're getting ready to take that exam. In fact, we're going to ask that you apply for a federal registration number, and you will need to have that number with you when you come to sit for the exam. You will also use this particular registration number to update your current mailing address and things of that nature. So the way that you do this is by going to the FCC-ULS website. So please get a pen and paper down, because right now we can't hand you all these nice little tools because we're doing it virtually instead of in hand. But you will need this in order to register to online, to make changes to your address, renew for your license, and to search for other station information. When you get out to that site, and I can also put this in the chat room if you didn't have an opportunity to write it down, you will see a page that looks like what's on the screen now. And you will scroll about midway of that page, you will see something that says filing. Right underneath that, it says new user registration. This is where you will go once you sign on to the website in order to get your FRN number. And I do believe that in that site, you will have to put your social security number, but that is a secured site, so you wouldn't have to worry about that getting in any hands other than what it needs to be. License and examination. So you wonder, who are all these people and what do they do? We have volunteer examiners that help you to get your exams, the volunteer examiner coordinators. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what each role does. In fact, I know that we have some VEs and some VECs. So if you are a VE, before I tell everyone what this role does, will you please raise your hand? And if you are a VEC, will you please raise your hand? I think Bruce is there and he may be raising his hands. He is one of our VECs. Unmute yourself, Bruce.
No, I'm a VE also. The VEC is in North Carolina.
Okay, thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. So one of the important reasons for knowing who the VEs are is because when you go to take your exam, you may very well see some of the people there that is proctoring the exam that you are going to take. So now I'll tell you a little bit more about what the VEs do. The VEs are the person who gives the exams and they run the exam sessions. Your VECs are typically the ones who send all of the documentation to what's like a team lead, and they have to then assign how many Vs are going to be there. You always at least have to have 3. But if we're testing, say, 10 people at one time, it would be almost impossible for just 3 VEs to be able to be able to monitor and take care of everything. And so, but that is basically what each one of them do. There are some forms that's going to be used that I will show you in a little bit that you will see when you get there to take your exam on that day. So this also talks about preparation. So you'll need to study the content. That's what we're doing with all these classes, is we're studying the content, having an opportunity to ask questions. There's a question pool in the back of your book. That's where the questions are going to be pulled from when you get ready to do your exam. I just mentioned that the exam is proctored, so you will not be there just taking an exam with nobody watching. It'll be just like if you were in college and you were sitting for an exam, you would have somebody there watching you. It's not to intimidate you, it's only to make sure that, of course, there's no cheating going on and anything that's not supposed to happen. All of the questions are multiple choice, and there is a fee involved. And so I think our fee is $15, and in some places it may be $10. But your license is going to be free. That examination fee actually pays for like the cost to print those exams on paper. It pays for like pens and pencils and things of that nature. So I mentioned to you about—
Patty, can I interrupt for a moment?
Absolutely, go ahead.
We had a question in the chat room of, can you still use your social security number? And correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Bruce, but as of about a year ago, you cannot come in and just give your social security number on the paperwork that you fill out for an exam. You absolutely must have an FRN number before you come in to take the exam. It's a requirement now.
That's correct. And the FRN will be used, as Patty mentioned, later to make changes to your station address, to upgrade. It's basically, I look at it as a shield for the social security number.
Thank you both. I appreciate that. And so what you see now is just some of the forms that you would see. The one that says reference copy is actually what your license will look like once you receive it from the FCC. The top portion is the portion that you can keep on file, and it asks for you to perforate the bottom part, and that's what you will have with you wherever you go. So if you're going to operate from your mobile vehicle or your mobile rig, you'll need to make sure that that copy is somewhere available. That NCVEC quick form is the application that you'll be filling out, and this is where you would be putting your FRN number. And then in the top left corner, if you're looking from my direction, would be the top right corner. This is the actual completion of the examination. So once you've completed, you're either going to get a pass grade or a fail grade. And to the left, it would be your name, all your information, where you live, that type of thing. And then it's going to be the 3 VEs that signed off that says, yes, Patty just passed this exam and she is able to get a license through the FCC. Those forms are the reference copy, and the NCVC is in your book. The other one I did not see in your book, and so that's why I put it on the screen. So then there's the responsibility of the licensure. You know, you want to prevent unauthorized operation of your station. And so one of the ways that you can do this is that if you're operating from home and you use a radio microphone or a headset or anything of that nature, you want to make sure to just put those somewhere in a secure place to where nobody can just turn on your radio, put the headset on, or grab the microphone and start talking, because that could interfere with your license if they're using that radio without being authorized. We have to always provide a current mailing address. I will tell you that this is the thing that people fail to do the most, but you need to update your mailing address if it changes with the FCC. The reason is that is from time to time, the FCC may want to inspect your station. They are not going to be happy if they're trying to inspect your station and they cannot find out where you are. It is required that you must keep that address updated at all times. So now we will go over some practice questions. That wasn't a whole lot, and so I'm going to ask that everyone would please go ahead and unmute themselves, and then you just get a chance to shout out the answers. Which of the following is a purpose of the amateur radio service rules and regulations defined by the FCC?
C.
There we go. I did hear someone say C, and so it's advancing skills in the technical and communication phases of the radio art. Don't worry about getting it wrong, because the right answer will come up, but the job is to actually try to get it right the first time. Which agency regulates and enforces the rules for the amateur radio service in the United States?
The FCC.
All right, good deal. What are the FCC rules regarding the use of phonetic alphabet for station identification in amateur radio service?
C. It's encouraged.
Thank you, very good. What is proof of possession of an FCC-issued operator primary license grant?
C.
Ooh, someone's been studying. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm sorry. I got a little out of control here. Which of the following describes the radio amateur civil emergency services, which is also considered RACES? Which describes RACES or races?
It's all the above.
It's C.
D.
Okay. It is indeed D. All
Oh,
of
it's
these
D. Yeah, you're right. It's
are
D.
correct. It's okay. That's how we learn. That's the only way we learn. So what may result when correspondence from the FCC is returned as undeliverable because the grantee failed to provide the correct mailing address?
B.
Absolutely. You do not want to go through all of this training and learning and getting your license just to have it revoked because you refused to put, or just maybe forgot to put your mailing address in. What is the normal term for an FCC-issued primary station operator amateur radio license grant?
D. 10 years.
Okay. What is the grace period following the expiration of an amateur license within the license may be renewed?
A.
How soon after passing examination for your first amateur radio license may you operate transmitter on an amateur service frequency?
D.
C.
D.
It is in fact C. That's a little bit of a trick one, but it is C. If your license has expired and is still within the allowable grace period, may you continue to operate a transmitter on amateur service frequencies?
A.
No.
Everybody agrees that it's A?
A.
A.
All right. When must the station licensee make the station and its records available for FCC inspection?
B.
B.
Yeah, B.
Okay. Wow, look at that. Y'all got all of those right. I am pumped right now. That is so exciting. So we will keep going. We're going to talk about privileges now. And so you have your band versus your frequency. And as you can see, there is a chart there that says like your 6 meters would fall in between 50 and 54 megahertz. And if you look at your UHF range, You see 70 centimeters would be between 420 and 450. Well, there's a formula there that is to be used if you ever forget what it should be. So if you take your band and you take 300 and you divide it by 6, tell me what you get. Anybody?
50.
50.
Okay, so it's 50. So if you ever forget, that is going to be something that is going to be asked when you're taking the test, from what I remember. So you'll need to pretty much remember that formula so that you can, of course, get the right answer. And so one of the other things that they wanted us to point out is that we should remember that bands of frequency ranges that have the same characteristics. The band identification is like a city name. The frequency is like a specific street address. And so if me and Bruce is my husband, for you all that don't know, K5DOV, if he's driving down or around somewhere and he wants to talk to me on the radio, he may say, hey, babe.
Killed your mic.
Patty, you're muted right now.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I just unmuted. I don't know how I muted. I haven't touched anything, but thank you for that. And so I will go backwards a little bit because I'm not sure what all of that you all heard or not. But basically, I was just saying that you want to keep in mind that formula that's there, that your band is equal 300 over your frequency. That's how you're going to find out what the ranges are. And then I wanted to remind you guys that if you think about it, your band identification is like a city name and a street address. And so if I was going to meet Bruce, I want to talk to him on the radio. So I said, hey, K5DOV, meet me on 6 meters. He may tell me that 6 meters isn't available right now. And so I'll say, okay, well, let's meet on 2 meters. And he'll say, what about 14652? So we're basically making sure that we're going to reach the correct destination to be able to talk to each other over the radio. So here it says, what can you do with a technician class license? And so there are power privileges. And this is something I believe also that's on the text. It's a maximum of 1500 watt peak envelope power. So that's what that PEP stands for. Don't use excessive power for the purpose. And so you just want to make sure that you're not using any more power than what's absolutely necessary to operate your radio. There are some cases where the power is restricted. And so again, if you look at that little chart, and it's also in the book, it'll tell you that if you have an HF rig, that there are certain privileges that you are not allowed to get on. And so like an example, it says 200 watts on 80, 40, 15, and your 10 meters. And later on, I will actually show you a band plan that you can see that a little bit better of what they're talking about. There's also emission privileges. And so, this is just a list of the different amateur emission types. There's CW. And so I always hear everyone talking about CW, So, mainly you just want to make sure that when you get ready to operate your radio, that frequency is not in use. Because if it is, it could cause a lot of problems. So if there's silence, a lot of times you can go ahead and use it. But if you have any questions about it, you will actually ask the question, is this frequency in use? And then pause and wait for that person to come back and talk to you. When you're in class with us, and I mean a physical brick and mortar building classroom, we give you out this band plan sheet. And I'm sure that Mike or Bruce will probably be emailing this to you guys if they haven't already. But you will really need to take some time and study this sheet and know how to use it. In fact, we have our HF rig at home, and we have this band plan sitting directly in front of our radios. It's going to tell you which bands you can operate on according to which frequency. We are both extras, and so we can pretty much operate a much further range than what technicians can. But if you look at the chart right now, it'll tell you, that the E is for extra, your A is advanced, your G is your general, your T is technician. So it'll tell you within which band you're able to operate, but you also have to keep in mind which restrictions you cannot operate. So I'm going to ask a quick question right now, and I ask anybody. Where can a technician license operate for 80 meters? What's the range of what they can operate? Just a technician. And instructors, y'all can help them if they can't answer.
At 3.525 to 3.6.
I said the same thing, but I was muted.
Oh,
Only CW.
what did you say, David?
They can do 3525 to 3600, but only CW.
That is absolutely correct. Very much so. So you just need to make sure that when you're operating within your range and that you do not go into those restricted areas. Mike or Bruce, I'm going to call on either one of you guys. Do y'all have any comments on the band plan?
Mike, you're muted. You're muted, Mike.
Okay, thank you. The chart that Patty's showing is in your book on page 1-23, but it's only in white, black, and blue. Everybody should have received this color chart she's working with as an enclosure to an email that went out this past week. If you got it, please raise your hand. Only one person got the chart. Okay, I can send it out again, but we will have to check the distribution then. We will get this to you. You need the chart in color, not the way it's shown in the book.
Absolutely, and thank you. And that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and implemented this in here, is because I wanted to make sure that everyone has it. You won't be able to have the chart when you take your test. So some of these things, for the purpose of the test, you'll have to put to memory. You'll just have to know. But once you pass the exam,
I got it, Mike.
Go ahead with.
I was just saying that it was in the email that you sent out on, but it's at the very bottom as an attachment. But Thursday you sent it out.
Thank you all. So check your
Thank you.
emails, and if you still did not get it, please send a chat to the group so that we'll know who still needs it. But you all should, in fact, have this band plan.
Patty?
So we will continue so that we don't get behind. So this next section talks about primary and secondary allocations. And so it says some authorized amateur frequencies are shared, but you have to make sure that you know the difference between your primary users and your secondary users. And your primary users basically take precedence over any conversations that you're having. And so you would always have to turn over the radio to a primary user if you're on there. And that's what it says on the slide. It says that you must avoid interfering with the users of the primary service. That is very, very important. Make sure that you're only talking when you're supposed to be talking. So here's your band plans. It says voluntary arrangement that apply under normal band loading conditions. And so this chart is pretty close to the chart that you saw earlier. It tells you that there are some areas of 10 meters where you are not allowed to operate or to where you're restricted. I will always go back and say it's just good amateur service if you would just make sure that that frequency isn't in use. And of course, not going to the restricted areas. And so I look at, your band loading conditions as it's like a party that's going on 24 hours a day, and people are going in and out all the time. But if you're tuning your radio, so you're listening to see if that particular place is open, or if you're monitoring the radio, you're putting your call sign out there and you're waiting for somebody to come back, that's pretty much going to let you know if you're in the place where you're supposed to be or not. We do have people that go out and they observe you on the radio. They're actually called observers, and our team can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you get into an area where you're not supposed to be, they have no problem contacting you or writing a report and send it to the FCC to let them know that you're not in the right area. So knowing your bands, knowing what your restrictions are absolutely crucial at this time. If you ever have any questions, our team is out here to help you if you're not able to understand the band plans and where you're supposed to be and where you're not supposed to be. And so it basically says by doing so, you discover who's out there, what they're doing, what the radio conditions are like, and what's the best way for you to contact them. There are people that are considered frequency coordinators. So this is groups that help allocate repeater channels to minimize interference. They're elected by your local and your regional amateurs. And it used to be a time that the FCC monitored all of this. In fact, it was organized through a thing that was called the National Frequency Coordination of Council. That is no longer available. All of this is actually governed through the FCC, and they will tell you to check with your state. So each state should be able to know what repeaters are out there, what repeaters are available, and things of that nature. If you have any questions about frequency coordinators or what frequencies or repeaters are available in your area, please, again, contact our team and they will let you know. Practice questions again. Before we get to the practice questions, Mike or Bruce, were there any other questions in the chat? We have plenty of time.
No questions in the chat.
Okay, we will continue. Thank you very much. Which of the
Well,
following?
Patty, I would mention that they will learn more about repeaters next week when Ron gives his presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's why I was just kind of scaled over it a little bit because I didn't want to run over into something that someone else is teaching. So
Thank
which
you.
of the following entities, you're welcome, which of the following entities recommends transmit, receive channels and other parameters for auxiliary and repeater stations?
B.
B.
Or C.
Very good. Who selects a frequency coordinator?
B. Oh, C.
Yeah, just remember it's the operators are in your local or regional area. Which frequency is within the 6 meter band?
A.
So again, you all will have to really study that chart so you'll know where each one of these fall in, because it'll be on that chart that was given to you guys. So that's going to be crucial to look at and to know, and at least until you take the exam. Which amateur bands are you using when your station is transmitted on 146.52 megahertz?
A.
A.
I heard A. What is the limitation for emissions on the frequencies between 219 and 220 megahertz?
B.
Anyone agree, disagree? Okay, B it is. On which HF bands does a technician class operator have phone privileges?
B. Ooh, I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very good.
I thought that was it. I wasn't sure.
Oh no, like I said, just that's the only way we're gonna learn. So don't be shy, just yell it out. We're not gonna slap your hands, we're too far away from you. Which of the following VHF, UHF frequency ranges are limited to CW only? CW only.
A.
I only heard one person answer. Someone else has something different. Do you agree or disagree? Very good. It is indeed A. Which of the following is a result of the fact that the amateur radio service is secondary in all portions of some amateur bands, such as portions of the 70 centimeter band? Let me give you all that one. That's a freebie.
I was just letting someone else answer.
I knew I saw that.
I didn't know anything again.
Which of the following HF bands have frequencies available to the technician class operator for ready and data transmissions? Someone else answer besides Mackenzie. Come on, throw something out there. Do, 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 do. Okay, 10 meter band only. What is the maximum peak envelope power? Everyone should know this because I put emphasis on that. Output for technician class operators using the assigned portion of the HF bands.
A.
A.
Except for some specific restrictions, what is the maximum peak envelope power output for technician class operators using frequencies about 30 megahertz?
D.
A.
Just remember that PEP is 1500 watts. That'll be an easy way to remember it. What is the band plan beyond the privileges established by the FCC?
Okay.
We'll keep going. What describes an amateur station that is transmitting and receiving on the same frequency?
C.
Correct. Where may SSB phone be used in amateur bands above 50 megahertz? Okay, so you all didn't do quite as good in this section as you did in the other one. So I'm gonna say that you all really need to spend some time looking at the chart and learning your band plans, your frequencies, and your restrictions. Not a big deal at this point, but you'll definitely wanna know that at the time that you take your exam. So we're gonna go over our international rules. International Telecommunication Union, you'll wanna remember that. It's the acronym ITU. And all of the sections are split off into regions 1, 2, and 3. You have your continental US and then you have your Pacific possessions. And so you'll kind of not need to put this so much to memory, but I think it may be one on there to where it'll ask you where's this region at. So you do want to look at the map and be able to do a visual and say, okay, that's in region 2 or that's in region 3. This is what that map looks like. So you'll see the region 1 is in green. I think it's in your books, but it's in black and white. So I like color because it helps me to really point it out and put emphasis on it. You have your region 2, which looks like a pretty big area, and then your region 3, which is split into 2 different parts. So just to break it down, the region 1, there's like countries like Africa, Europe, Russia, and parts of the Middle East. Region 2, you have North America, South America, Caribbean islands, and Hawaii. And then region 3, pretty much all the rest, even though they're on both sides of the map. So one thing that's important to know about your international operating authorization is you'll want to remember the word reciprocal operating authority. You'll also need to know both of these acronyms. IARP was pretty easy, International Amateur Radio Permit. But CEPT, I was like, where does the European come in at this? But it is for European Conference of Postal and Telecommunications Administration license. And there's a whole lot more about international operating under the ARRL website. So what that reciprocal operating authority does is it just gives you authority to operate your radio in a different country. You can't just go over to, you know, say Canada or over to Africa and start using your radio. You have to ask for permission to do that. And when you ask for permission, most of the time that country will grant you the permission, and they will let you know how you need to go about saying what your call sign is, what additional letters you need to add to basically identify that you're using a portable. In other words, you're away from your regular location, but you want to use the radio wherever else it is that you go. So it says here that you must comply with the host country's regulations. You may operate from U.S. flag vessels. Host country rules apply in territorial waters. And it tells you here, contacts with other countries must be allowed by that country and by the U.S. So if you can see this map here, if I was going to, say, visit the Cayman Islands, I would want to contact them in advance and say, hey, I'm planning a trip to the Cayman Islands. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. Sometimes it may even take 2 weeks to get the approval, so you'll even want to check that if you're really interested in using your radio. Will you please grant me permission? So they turn around, they grant me the permission. And when I go over there, I have to make sure that when I'm saying my call sign, I add some additional identifiers. So my call sign is KM4OZK. I would say KM4OZK / and if you look at the map, it says ZF for Cayman Islands. So I would have to add that ZF at the end. When we visited Canada and we were over British Columbia, we took our ham radios with us. And so at that time, it was KM4OZK / BE7. So just make sure you get the permissions before you go into another country and start to operate. Most of them are going to grant it for you anyway. The fun part about all of this is that, you know, you get to talk to other hams from around the world, and you get to talk to them in their country. And if you have an HS, you can become a DX, and you can attract a huge crowd, but you have to do it with the proper authorization. Going to practice questions again. So what is the ITU?
Remember to unmute yourselves.
Oh,
Everyone unmute yourself so you can answer. Thank you, Bruce, for the reminder. Which amateur radio stations may make contact with an amateur radio station on the ISS using 2 meter and 70 band frequencies?
B.
Good, good. What types of international communications are permitted by an FCC licensed amateur station?
A.
When are you allowed to operate your amateur station in a foreign country?
A.
A.
Thank you. From which of the following locations may an FCC licensed amateur station transmit in addition to places where the FCC regulates communications?
D.
That's very important to remember. That's on the test. With which countries are FCC licensed amateur stations prohibited from exchanging communications?
A.
Okay, very good. Y'all did really good on that section also. So we're almost to the end of this. We're going to do module 16, which is call signs. So your call signs are basically just considered your radio names. They all have a prefix and they have a suffix. And so you can see that little map there. That's not a big picture of it. I think Mike has a much better presentation because he has done a lot of communication with other countries, and he has this huge background that you all may have seen at the first class that will show you all the different countries and how and all the different identifiers for each of the call signs. And so every country is assigned at least one unique block of prefixes. For the US, and you'll see later which ones they use for the US, it's like KNWAA through AL. Most Canadians use VA or VJ for their prefixes. In French, it may start with an F. In Japan, with the J, and in Singapore, a 9V. The suffixes are 1 to 2 to 3 letters. And so this basically says the same thing. All amateur call signs have a prefix and a suffix. The prefix indicates the country of the license, and the suffix indicates a specific licensee. The prefix generally has 2 or 3 letters, and they're assigned by the ITU. The suffix has 1 or more letters. So if you look at this map, it'll kind of help you out. It tells you that the US call signs begin with certain identifiers. So you hear me say K, that's what mine's begin with. Mine's is KM because that's the area, the line of how they're going. So it'll be like KM, and then it'll go to KNs, and it'll just continue to go until they're all out of the Ks, and then it'll go with the next letter. The number is 4 because I got my license here in Florida. So if you look at that map in the purple, you'll see that number 4. Bruce obtained his license in Oklahoma, so his is KA5. So based on which state you got your licenses is going to determine which numerical number is part of your call sign. And this is pretty much the same thing that I've gone over. Just basically tells you that they refer to the FCC sequential call sign system or description of the call sign groups. And so they are grouped based on your destination. So we just talked about this earlier. We talked about indicators, adding a call sign with a slash or the word portable when you're out of the country. So it says a portable is operating away from your primary station location, or that it's mobile, aeronautical mobile, maritime mobile, things of that nature. When I had my technician license and I went over to get my general license, I didn't have to wait to actually have my license in hand to start using my new privileges. I was able to say KM4OZK/AG, and they knew that I was just waiting for my license, but it was already processed in the FCC system. So you can also choose your call signs. They're called vanity call signs. And typically, they will make you pay for them to have them, but we actually have 2 of our really good friends that has decided that they wanted to use a vanity call sign. So what that is one of the person's call signs was KM4VLD, and then he changed it to W4CPD because he was working as a volunteer police officer for Crestview. His wife, who loves Disney, her original call sign was KN4ENP. She changed it to WD4DCL because she loves Disney Cruise Line. So if you want a Pacific vanity sign, you are able to make an application and request that sign. There are special event and club call signs. And so every now and then there are special events, like every year we have a field day. So instead of everyone using their own individual call signs, they have one call sign that's used for that entire group. So when we're doing all of our, what they call CQ, or requesting that other people come in and let us know where they are, we may say W4AAZ. Every single person within the ham radio know our group uses that same identifier. We have JOTAs where we help out with Boy Scouts and things of that nature. They may have gotten their own Pacific call sign for that Pacific event. So that's what that used for. It tells you that you must have a valid club, and the application has to be done by a club trustee. So last of the practice questions, and we're going to wrap this up. For which license classes are new licenses currently available from the FCC?
C.
Who may select a desired call sign under the vanity call sign rules?
D.
D.
Which of the following is a vanity call sign which a technician class amateur operator might see if available?
A.
And guess what? We finished, and we finished in time. And so I will say 73's KM4OZK. A lot of times they ask that you use your phonetics, especially when you're doing contests and things of that nature, because when you're talking really fast, someone may not be able to write down who you are. So I am Kilo Mike 4, Oscar Zulu Kilo. I will turn it back over to Mike to see if there's any questions, and then we will go on to break. Thank you all.